All right, guys, we are done with all the bushings, ball joints, and all refinished the suspension. We have our refinished hubs, new bearings, seals, rotors, refinished dust shields. There's our new upper control arm. We put in our lower control arm bushings, our new ball joint, and our guide rod mount bushing. So all this is ready to go back on the car. Guys, all the cars that you see in these videos are for sale on my website, www.woodsandbarclay.com. Enjoy the video. Hey guys, welcome back to the series on the 1985 300 CD. This is the car that is desert red. Very rare color. This is the first time I've ever seen it. Anyway, I think this is part 3 in the video series. You can see I've got it up on the lift. In the last video, we did our inspection and picked out all the parts that I want to replace under the car. And so today we're going to get dirty. I mean, really dirty. We're removing all of that original old suspension. And this will probably be a 2-part video. I'm going to do disassembly of this in this video and then show refinishing some of the original parts that need to be repainted and refinished. And then it'll probably be another video that I start showing more reassembly of the suspension on the car. I don't know. We'll see how far we get. I try to keep the videos about an hour maximum. So anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. All right, let's start by getting all these wheels off. And you can see our crusty caliper on here. Looks like they changed the brake pads. Those are new pins, but we're getting rid of these. We're taking off the hubs, the rotors, the dust shield. All of this is coming out of the car. I'm going to get inside the wheel well. We're going to clean that up really nice. Refinish any of the hard, metal parts that you don't actually need to replace them. I just like to clean them in the parts washer and paint them, make them look nice again. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to do is disconnect this original caliper. That's just 2 19mm bolts on the back, and then we'll pop our dust shield off and take our hub and rotor off the car. There we go. There's that crusty old rotor, and that's just a 19mm. We'll take this guy out of here. And our brake pad wear sensor is just a 10mm right here. So we'll remove that. And then we can unplug our wear sensors. And I see these are new wear sensors, and these are also new pads. So someone had recently put in new pads and sensors. But yeah, we'll just take that out, and I'll stick that little bolt right back in here so we don't lose it. And we're just going to slide off our caliper, and that can just hang there until we finally get around to that part. Let's go ahead and take off this hub and rotor. I'm just filling these rotors. They're not too bad, but yeah, like I said, we're putting all new stuff on here anyway. And we're just going to pop off our grease cap. You can just tap that. Now, guys, you always want to save your grease caps. These don't tear up. These are very, very good. You want to reuse them. The aftermarket stuff, or even the stuff Mercedes sells now, it doesn't quite feel right when you put it on there. And these always feel great, so we'll save these. Now right here you have your radio interference pin. That's just a little copper pin in the end of the spindle. We can take that out, we'll save that. And here's your spindle nut. So to get that out, it's just a 5mm. For those of you that have watched my videos, I know you've seen me do this a million times, but I just show the restoration or refurbishment on every car, guys. And this is what we're doing on this car. Now, I can see that was on there a little too tight. So that probably wasn't good for these bearings, but we're replacing all the bearings anyway. But I'll show you how you correctly tighten that down later. All right, that is now disconnected. There's our outer bearing right here. And you can just pull this off the car. There we go. Okay, here we have our dust shield. It looks fantastic. We want to go ahead and remove this. It's also a 5mm. right, what we see here, guys, is your steering knuckle. That's what attaches the ball joint and the upper control arm. So what we want to do now is go ahead and we have to break loose all the tie rods and everything across the car. So I'll show you how to break one of them loose, and then I'll go ahead and knock the other ones off camera. But you have a 17mm nut here. And these nuts, they're only like 35 foot-pounds of torque. They're not on, they're very tight. I like to use a tool. If you have the right tool, everything is easier. All right, we'll put that on there. We'll tighten it down, and it's going to separate that tapered fitting. And I just put a little spacer here that makes the gap a little more flat on the stud there. Now you got to kind of stand back because this will go flying once it comes undone. There we go. And you see how it just popped our tie rod loose. And now our spindle, our steering knuckle, is now loose. So with the spindle loose, that gives us access to the back side here, and we can remove our ball joint nut right there. Also, we're going to remove the shock because we're removing the lower control arm and this entire assembly, including the upper control arm. Everything's coming out of the car here. Now, before I start doing that, guys, off camera, that ball joint I just broke loose, I have to do it here, take out our steering shock here, which is 17mm, and break that ball joint loose there, and there. And that removes all the steering linkage. And it's done the same way as I just did this one. So let me knock that out real quick. All right, guys, what you can see here, all of the steering linkage and brakes have been removed. So that's everything from this steering knuckle all under the car over here to that side. That's all the steering linkage. You have your dust shield, here's your hub with the outer bearing, and around back is the actual inner bearing and seal, which we're going to knock that out and replace it. And then we have our outer tie rod, our steering shock. And guys, let me show you why we changed this. This is a steering stabilizer shock. Look at it. It's not doing anything. There's our center link, outer tie rod, dust shield, and rotor over here. So what we need to do next is disassemble all this stuff here. We have our guide rod bushing, our steering knuckle or upper control arm, and our lower control arm, which is right here. And we also need to remove our spring with the spring compressor tool. All right, guys, what we need to do now is remove the spring. And you can see there's our spring right there. Now, keep in mind, I haven't cleaned under here, guys. This is all going to be cleaned up and beautiful when I'm done. But we got to get this spring out because we want to remove the lower control arm, and that spring will come shooting out of the car and kill us. There's a tremendous amount of force on that spring. So the way you do that, there's an actual hole right here that the spring compressor tool goes down into. And let me show you that tool. Now, this is made by, I guess you say that Gidor, or let's see, Jadori or Gidor, I don't know. Originally, it was made by Klon Tools. This is the actual Mercedes dealership tool. And you have some, we're going to pull these out here, some spring pucks. That's the 126 up top. Here's the 123. And here's the pucks that we put inside the spring. And you can see it's got some like weird contraption or weird design there. And what happens, see if I can demonstrate, this compressor tool slips down through the pucks. And when it goes through there, you can see that those little teeth right there, there you go, they grip right in there. But if you want to take it out, you turn it to here and it can come out. But if you turn it to here, it grips, and that will compress our spring, and then we can safely set it on the shop floor until we're done reinstalling the suspension. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and insert these pucks. Now, this one goes on the bottom. I'm going to put it somewhere around there. And then this one, we want it to go up as high as we can get it. Probably something about like that right there. Now we want to on the upper control arm. Sorry, the ball joint's actually going to come next. What we're going to undo now is this upper shock. And I do have a jack stand under the lower control arm just in case that spring is not compressed properly. I'll show you guys that in a minute. But what we're going to do is use a shaved down wrench. And we're going to put it under that bottom nut there. Now we'll hold that still while we get the top nut off. There we go. And let's see. So we do have a jack stand right there, just in case this spring decides to uncompress and come flying out. That's going to protect us right there. All right, now that that's pretty loose, we can go ahead and pull that out. There we go. Now our shock is disconnected, and I can see, yeah, these bushings are excellent condition. They replaced these when they put in the new shock, so we're going to keep these. All right, now we're going to raise the car off that jack stand, and we're going to see if we can pop this upper ball joint loose. We might need to use the ball joint separator. Okay, I can still see it's holding on there, so we're going to go ahead and put the ball joint separator on there. And guys, I know it's dirty under here. Don't worry, all this is going to get cleaned up. Just be patient. All right, we're going to put our ball joint separator under here, and I'll put my little spacer in here to take up some slack. And we're just going to stand back. There we go. You see how that popped loose now? All right, guys, this is the part I absolutely hate. We are going to remove that spring. There we go. You can see there's no compression on it. Now I just need to grab it, carry it out of the way. We're going to pull our shock out of the way. There we go. Okay, there we go. Let's get this out of the way. Guys, there is a extreme amount of potential energy right there. Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of force. So you want to lay that out of the way and don't touch it until it's time to go back into the car. All right, next thing we want to do here is just remove our shock. And that is two 10 millimeter 12-point bolts. All right, now let's go ahead, put our little bolts right back in there so we don't lose them. You see now our steering knuckle is loose, and see, that's why we want to change that ball joint. Look how floppy that is. That ball joint is worn. You can see the boot is ripped and there's grease leaking out. So let's go ahead and just take the nut off here. Okay, let's see. This is a small Pitman arm puller, and there's part number 8149 made by OTC Tools. Put it around the end. There's a spike right here that goes into the top of the ball joint. There we go. See how it just popped it loose? And there is our steering knuckle. Here we go. Now we can get that ball joint out of there and get our steering knuckle all cleaned up. All right, the next thing we want to do is just remove our spring perch here, and that's just 13 millimeters. We'll crack all those loose. There's three 13 millimeters. And this all gets cleaned up and refinished. All right, next thing we want to do is remove our lower control arm. And we have, whoops, a 24 millimeter nut here. Let's see if I can get this broken loose. Those are always on there tight. There we go. See how it moves back and forth? That's by design, guys, because that's how you adjust your camber and your caster during your alignment. It's through this bolt right here. All right, I think that's good enough. And now we can push that bolt out. There we go. All right. Okay, now the lower control arm is actually loose. Now we need to move over here and get the control rod bushing out. And then this whole A-arm assembly right here will come out of the car. On muscle cars, you know, this is usually one piece. It's a lower A-arm. In Mercedes, they have a two-piece design with a bushing back here. Okay, I'm under the car. there's the front of the car up there. There's that lower control arm. And then there's our guide rod right there. And right behind it, there we go. You have three 13 millimeter bolts right here to get out. All right, now that we have those 3 bolts out, watch this. There we go. All right, guys, we have all of the front suspension removed with the exception of the upper control arm. We'll do that next. Now I get to clean under here and get this all back to a factory pretty finish. But what we can see, here's what we have removed. We have the steering knuckle, which is also, you know, attached to the spindle. That's part of the steering knuckle. With the old ball joint and the tie rod mounting arm, we're actually going to remove this to press in our new ball joint. Then we have our lower control arm. You can see there's those crusty old lower control arm bushings. We have our guide rod right here that goes to the guide rod bushing. And then here we have our Bilstein shock. Oh, and here is the spring perch. So this all has to be disassembled here and taken over to the parts washer and refinished. In the meantime, I want to go ahead and start cleaning up in here. Okay guys, actually before I start cleaning, let's go ahead and get this upper control arm out. Now we need to disconnect it from our sway bar, and that's just a 17 millimeter. And that bolt comes out right there. You have a plate right there. All right, to get the upper control arm bolt out, there's actually, I've got my wrench on it, my impact on it right now. There's a 19 millimeter nut there. And then we got to reach around the back right here to hold the nut still. There we go. And I see the bolt right here. I can just pull that out. Here we go. I mean, it still has the zinc plating on it. Awesome condition. Let's get that upper control arm out. All right, guys, that upper control arm is now loose. There we go. Now, that may appear okay, right? Let me show you why we're replacing it. Look at this ball joint. Look how loose that is. That maybe had, 20, 30,000 miles left, but that was eventually going to cause a problem. So let's go ahead. Next, we want to start cleaning up under here. All right, guys, a great way to clean in these wheel wells is you put some acetone on a rag, and the acetone will start to soften everything up. There, you can already see the original paint coming through right under there. But use a wire brush. And then you can wipe with acetone and see how it starts to bring back the original paint from under there. So let me go ahead and get all this cleaned up. And I've also got the touch-up paint. So once I get it cleaned up, I want to refinish it back to the factory original, nice fresh paint under here. All right, guys, there we go. Got everything cleaned up beautifully. Put a nice coat of the desert red paint in there. And it looks absolutely fantastic. So now it's time to start cleaning up all those old suspension parts in the parts washer, refinish these, and start getting all our new bushings and everything mounted up. And keep in mind, everything you just saw in the disassembly, I have to do it again on this side of the vehicle. So this is a lot of work. But let's go ahead and move to the cleaning part of the suspension and pressing in the new lower control arm bushings, new ball joints, new guide rod mounts, all that stuff. All right, we want to go ahead and knock out this ball joint and then get this cleaned up. But the first part of doing that is you need to remove this tie rod steering arm connector right here. All right, we'll just set that aside. Let's go knock out this old ball joint and then start cleaning up parts in the parts washer. All right, you can see we have our steering knuckle in the vise here. Now to get these ball joints out, you use a steel slug and you want to bang it out. There we go. That is one ball joint removed. Now we want to clean this up, but also we want to go press out the lower control arm bushings now. Okay, the next thing we want to do, we want to get these bushings out, but we also want to unscrew the original guide rod mount. And that's held in there, the 13 millimeter. All right, we'll just throw that away. All right, what we want to pay attention to here before we knock these bushings out, you can see these bushings, see how, you know, they're a little dry rotted, but see that tab right there and that tab right there? Those tabs are supposed to be vertical. Those are locating tabs that show you how to, the orientation to install this. And I can see, you know, just with years of use and age, these have twisted a little bit. So we'll make sure when we put the new ones in, these tabs are vertical. You basically want them vertical in line with the control arm. Okay, you can see these bushings here, and going through the bushing is an aluminum sleeve. You can see it right there, and it's beveled on the edge. So what we have to do is undo that bevel with a chisel, and then we can push those out, and that will free up the bushings to come out. I'll show you guys. All right, you see what's happening? See how the edge of that bevel, we're pushing it around? Because then we want to be able to push this sleeve through. Okay, I've got it pushed through a little bit. You can see the beveled edge right there. We're going to go ahead and just finish tapping it through. All right, what that is, see that beveled edge, and I'll show you when I reassemble them. That goes up. That beveled edge presses against the beveled edge here on the bushing, and it holds them together. So let's go ahead and get this bushing out now. To get these bushings out, you need an air hammer or air chisel. There we go, there's one. And there's the other. And here we go. There's those old bushings. You can see a little deformed, but yeah, time to replace these guys. All right, guys, next step is to clean and refinish the original suspension before we start installing the new bushings. All right, everything is cleaned up in the parts washer. I got all the grease and grime off of it. Now let's refinish these, and I'll be back in a second once I'm done painting them. Okay, we've got these all cleaned up and refinished in the semi-gloss black. They look absolutely beautiful. Now let me go ahead and, where are they? I need to clean up the dust shields, and I want to go ahead and separate the rotors from the hubs and clean up the hubs. And then we're going to start putting stuff back together. Okay, we have our hub attached to the rotor. And what we want to do here, this is a big earthquake impact. It's got a lot of foot-pounds of torque. And you need that in order to get these detached. All right, and once you have the bolts out, you can separate the hub, there we go, from the rotor. Now, what we want to do now is remove this inner seal and get the inner bearing out, and then we want to clean up these hubs. All right, so what you want to do with the hub, you just want to put it in your vise, and we're going to use a chisel to actually chisel in the edges of the old seal, and then once it's chiseled in a little bit, you can use a seal puller and we can pull it out. So here's the seal right here, it's pressed in. So we have to actually knock in the edges to get her loose. go. All right, we pull out that old seal, and then there is our old bearing. And I can see there's the inner part of the seal. It actually came out on the back of the bearing. So let's go ahead. We want to get this in the parts washer now and clean out all of that old original grease in there, because we're going to repack and re-grease all of this. All right, what I like to do first is get as much grease out as I can so I don't clog up my parts washer. There we go. Now I can see the vehicle is being well maintained. There's plenty of grease in here. All right, let's get it out of the other one here. There we go. And you can see how clean it is in there now. Now that is the bearing race, where the bearing rides. And guys, you can replace the bearing race, but that really only happens if you have a damaged bearing and you actually damage your race. Those are in outstanding condition. There's the race there and the race there. Those absolutely do not have to be replaced. So let's go ahead and clean up the dust shields here, and then we will go ahead and refinish all these parts. Okay, here we go, guys. Everything is refinished. We got the hubs, steering knuckle, dust shields, lower control arm, spring perch, mounting perch. Now, keep in mind, this is we also have that and that from the passenger side of the car too, but I'm going to do that later. And then, of course, the hubs and dust shields, those are from both sides of the car. So now the fun part, let's go ahead and start pushing in the new bushings. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and press in our ball joint. And let me show you how you do that. Take the nut off the top here. We have a special tool that has a cutout where it's able to go around the steering knuckle, and I'll show you how that works. And we'll put it right around the ball joint. There we go. And we'll crank down our hydraulic press. This is a 20-ton shop press. You can see the knurls right here, and it's going to press in. This is a press fit. All right, we just bottomed out, and there we go. We can have a perfectly pressed in brand new ball joint. All right, now we're going to do the lower control arm bushings. Now we're pressing in the lower control arm bushing, and let me show you how these tabs are aligned. You see here we have a tab right there and right there, and those are aligned vertically. That would be perpendicular to the center line of the control arm. And the reason it's like that is you have a flat side on the bushing there and there, and those tabs show you where the flat sides are, and the flats are supposed to be at the top and at the bottom. So we've got a little silicone lubricant we sprayed on there, and we're just going to go ahead and push that in. All right, there's one, and let me push in the other side. All right, just got done pushing in the other side, and we'll undo it and take a look here. All right, there we go. We can see our tabs are correctly lined up and our new bushings are pressed in. Now let me show you how to insert the center pin. Okay, so to get this the center pin in, we're just going to, first we'll push it through here. Your radius on your lug bolt for your wheel, that radius edge there gives you the same bevel that's required here. So you just put that right there, and there we go. We have a nice beveled edge. Okay, now we have our guide rod mount, our control rod mount, and you can see I put a little anti-seize on the threads, and we simply take this, and this screws back in. There we go. And we'll screw that down and then we'll get this reinstalled back in the car. Now, for ease of installation, I measured how far this was in before I took it off, and it was right at 14 inches, because you can screw this in or out, and my measurement was 14 inches, which that's exactly where it is. So that'll make it a little easier at the alignment shop. All right, guys, what we have now, we have our hubs, rotors, outer bearing, inner bearing, and inner dust shield, or bearing seal. Sorry, not dust shield, bearing seal. We have them for both sides. Now, what I want to do, we want to go ahead and pack the inner bearings and then reattach our rotors. And to pack a bearing, you get some grease on your hand and you pack it in. You want it to squirt up into the rollers and out the sides. So we'll go ahead and get this bearing good and packed. It's packed. Let's move our hub up here. We want to, put some grease down in the hub, because that's where the spindle is going to ride. So we'll put a nice coating of grease down in here. All right. And we'll just go around the race a little bit. And there we go. We'll drop our bearing in there. Now what we want to do is press in our seal. So we just put our seal right there. And you can tap this in with a wooden block and a hammer. Let me show you how to do that. All right, pretty easy, guys. You just put a wood block right up here on your seal. And there we go. That guy is tapped in there nice and flush all along the edges. Perfect. All right, let me go ahead and finish the other one. Well, actually, I'll do the other one off camera, but let's go ahead and attach our rotor to our hub. All right, so our rotor, we have two sets of holes. You have one in the middle, outside, outside. They rotate like that. The ones in the middle, attach it to your hub. The ones on the outside, there we go, let me show you. So those attach to your hub, and then once this is on the car, the outside holes are actually for the lug bolts to hold the wheels on, go in through the other side. Okay, before you put your bolts in, Mercedes requires a little blue Loctite on each one, and then I just start them by hand so you don't get any cross threading. So let me go ahead and do that. I got to apply Loctite to each one and get them started. All right, then we want to torque them down in a star pattern. And there we go. Okay, now we can flip over our rotor and hub, and we can pack our outer bearing and put it in here. Now the outer bearing, you notice there's no seal. That's why you want to do this last, because it'll fall out. So once it's packed, we can just set it aside and the bearing won't fall out. And same process goes here. Just want to get that grease up in there. All right, now we'll take a nice coat of grease, put it around our race. There we go. We'll drop our bearing in there. And there we go, guys. So let me knock out the other side. I'll show you when I'm done. Okay, what we want to do next, we're back on the driver's steering knuckle. We want to reattach the tie rod mounting arm. Remember, that had to be removed to get the ball joint mounted. And we do have to apply the blue Loctite. And that's just a 19 millimeter. All right, guys, we are done with all the bushings, ball joints, and all refinished the suspension. We have our refinished hubs, new bearings, seals, rotors, refinished dust shields. There's our new upper control arm. We put in our lower control arm bushings, our new ball joint, and our guide rod mount bushing. So all this is ready to go back on the car. first thing we're going to do is get our lower control arm and guide rod bushing back up in here. There we go. Get our holes lined up. All right. Next thing we want to do is we got a new nut for the lower control arm bolt. Let's get this guy in here. There we go. And guys, you don't want to tighten this down until the suspension is back on its own weight on the ground. We're just going to put the nut on there loosely for now. All right, guys, Mercedes wants you to put a little blue Loctite on the guide rod mount bolts before reapplying them. And we'll just get them started by hand here. There we go. Let's get them snug. And there we go, guys. All right, guys, here is our brand new upper control arm. So we're going to go ahead, put that around our sway bar, and then we need to go under the hood and put our bolt back through there. All right, guys, you can see the hole right here. Let's see if I can point to it. There it is. And I got lucky and got that hole lined up without looking. It just kind of went in there. So now let's just push that bolt through there. And yeah, guys, I got lucky. Normally you have to fight that for like 20 minutes trying to get that hole lined up. And it just went right through there. And then we want to put our nut back on the back of it. Okay, now we want to go ahead, put our bushing back on here. There we go. And then our retaining bracket. Now we want to put a little blue Loctite on here first. All right, there we go. We got our blue Loctite there. And that just screws in. All right, snug it up. And there we go, guys. Upper control arm installed. Okay, here's our beautiful redone steering knuckle with our new ball joint. And temporarily, we'll just put the ball joint right, come on, there we go. We'll stick it in there, and we're just going to put the nut on the top. We're not going to crank it down yet, just to hold it in there. Now, we'll bend that out of the way there, but see how stiff that new ball joint is? See how this stays in place? It doesn't flop around. Remember that other ball joint was just like flopping around. It was you know, worn out. All right, let's put our spring perch back on there. All right, let's go ahead and tighten that stuff down. All right, we'll go ahead and finish it off with our hand wrench. Just want to make sure everything is snug. Okay, guys, what's important when putting this spring back in, you want to have the bottom coil line up right here. You can see there's a little like indentation, and it comes around, and there's a stop right there. All right, this is definitely no fun. Now put a little silicone lubricant on the top rubber mount so it slips in here a little easier. And we're just going to slide it right up here. There we go. All right. Okay, we're going to go ahead and put our nice new Bilstein shock back in here. 10 millimeter 12-point socket. Beautiful. Now let's go ahead and attach our upper control arm to our steering knuckle. All right, to do that, I've got the hole lined up, and we're going to lower the vehicle and compress the suspension a little, and that should go right through there. There it goes. Here we go. We'll go ahead and get our new nut on there. Okay. There we go. Now, what we want to do is torque down the upper ball joint, lower ball joint, and then we can remove our spring compressor and decompress the suspension. All right, now I can go under here. We got a ball joint tightened down and the upper control arm. Now I'm going to go decompress our suspension. Let's get our pucks out of here. Beautiful. All right, guys, starting to look really good in here. New lower control arm bushings. Brand new ball joint. Of course, there's the new Bilstein shock that was already in there. Brand new upper control arm. Brand new guide rod mount. And I refinished all the suspension, cleaned it up. Looks absolutely fantastic. All right, next, let's go ahead and put on our dust shield and hub and rotor and redo the brake caliper. Okay, let's go ahead and get this dust shield on here. And I've put a little blue Loctite on the mounting bolts. And guys, you don't want to crank these down very tight. You just want to snug them up because these are small and they will break if you really get in there and crank on them. Okay, let's go ahead and get our new hub and bearings and seals and rotor on here. All right, so first thing we want to do is just wipe a little grease on our spindle. There we go. Now we're going to put on our new hub. There we go. We got our new seal on there. Now we want to just wipe away the grease from the threads. Okay guys, your spindle nut has a flat side and a rounded side. Flat side goes up to the bearing, and these are only meant to be on there hand tight. You just want to remove the play. You don't want to over tighten these or your bearings will not be able to ride correctly. They won't have the right amount of preload. So the way you do that, so I've got it on there now. You hear that? We can hear there's play in there. So if we tighten it up hand tight, back it off, there's a little play, still a little play. There we go. That's perfect. And then you want to go ahead, tighten down your lock nut or your lock bolt. That's the perfect amount of preload. You just want to get the play out. You do not crank those down. Perfect. All right, next thing we want to do is put in our little, I think that's like an AM radio interference pin. Probably not really needed for modern times, but that's what came in the cars, so I always put them back in there. Might even be FM interference too. All right, we got that in there. Now let's put on our grease cap. All right guys, the bearing kit comes with new grease caps. However, I always like to use the original Mercedes grease caps. They just fit better and they go in place better and they just work better than the new stuff. So Mercedes says to pack some grease in the grease cap before putting it on there. And then you just slip it on there and we tap it down with a rubber mallet. All right, here we go. Now let's go ahead and wipe this off. Oh, doesn't that look nice, you guys? All right, we're on the home stretch here. Let's go ahead and get this brake caliper off of here. And guys, the best way to do this, get your new brake hose, put a cap over it so it doesn't leak out the end. And then what we're going to do, we're just going to disconnect this old line and then immediately plug this in, and we'll lose very minimal fluid. It's almost done here. There we go. Now I'll just quickly attach our new line up here. There we go. See, we lost very, very minimal fluid. All right, I'll just snug that down. Then we're going to put our caliper on there. Okay, we got our brand new ATE caliper. This is the kind of tricky part here. We're going to take our plug out and we'll pop the cap and quickly try to screw this on there. All right, now I'll get everything mounted up here and put our bolts back in there. Okay, ATE provides us with all new mounting hardware. So we'll go ahead and get our mounting bolts out. They also even apply the blue Loctite from the factory. All right, we'll just put these on the back. Just get them started there. Now I'll go ahead and torque those guys down. Okay guys, I've gone ahead and tightened down the brake line here, but you'll notice, see how our brake line is like kind of twisted and stressed? I see a lot of mechanics leave the lines like that. But because when we tighten that down, it kind of twists the line. So when it does that, I like to go back up here to the upper line, and we'll just crack it loose. All right, see how we're turning it? See how the line is getting untwisted? Because you don't want any extra strain on your brake line. There we go. Almost there. There we go. A little bit more. There we go. Now see how it's just a fluid, like smooth turn right into the caliper? That's how you want it. Okay, time to put in our brake pads. These are genuine, there we go, ATE pads. And guys, we just slip those right in there. Now they provide us with all the new mounting hardware. Let me get that. All right, first thing you have is your retaining bracket here. And these pins, I've showed you this a million times in my videos, but those pins, they have a lead crush washer right there. And when you push this pin in, that crush washer crushes and retains the pin. So you push that through there. And let's get the one on the bottom. Like that. Now we need a little punch. We'll tap those through there. Okay, you see our little pins right here? So if we just put a punch on here, right like that, I can tap them through. There we go. Now we need to attach our brake pad wear sensor. All right, there we go. You see there's a little hole right there and a little hole right there. That is where we plug in our brake pad wear sensor. The other one, there we go. Now we just plug in our sensors right there, and we are done with the front brake. All right guys, it's starting to look really good under here. New hubs, new bearing seal, new rotors, new brake caliper, new pads, new pad wear sensors, new hose, new control rod or guide rod mount, new upper control arm, new Bilstein shock, new ball joint, refinished all the suspension. Guys, this is as good as it gets on one of these cars. All right, next what we want to do is start reinstalling our tie rods. All right, guys, the first tie rod we're going to install here on the driver's side. And there we go. We'll just put one in right there. Put our nut back on the top. Now, we'll definitely need to adjust these and get an alignment. Put our other one on there. Let's go ahead and do an adjustment, a little adjustment right now. All right, it's got to be close enough to get us to the alignment shop. Okay, here's the tie rod we just loosely put in here. Next, we want our drag link and steering shock, which goes across here. Let me go ahead and get that. All right, here we go. Here's our new drag link. And let's go ahead and just take off our protective boots here. Now you see I've already attached the steering shock here. We'll put our other end right here. This actually attaches to the frame, the steering stabilizer shock, and you want to reuse this nut and bolt. That's why I have them up here. So we'll just go in here, put that right in there, and let's get our bolt to go back through there. There we go. And we'll put our nut on there. Okay, now I can't proceed to the other side because I need to rebuild all the suspension on the other side of the car. But here's what we have so far. New steering stabilizer shock, new drag link, new outer tie rod, ball joint, brake caliper, pads, wear sensor, refinish the hub, new bearings, new seal, new rotor, new brake hose, new upper control arm, new guide rod mount, new Bilstein shock, new lower control arm. And guys, everything you just saw in this video, I now have to go do that on the other side of the vehicle. So I'm gonna go ahead, knock out this side of the vehicle, and then I'll come back when I'm done and everything is complete on the front suspension. All right, guys, it's the next day, and this is a great way to end the week. It's Friday, like 5 o'clock, and I just finished on the front of this car. Let's take a look. So as you can see over here on the passenger side, we have refinished everything. New upper control arm. There's, of course, the new Bilstein shock. Refinished the hubs, new bearings, seals, new rotor, new lower control arm bushing. Oh, let's see back here. Okay, new calipers, new pads, new brake pad wear sensors, new brake pad hose. And back here we have our beautiful new ball joint. And here we have our tie rod, steering shock, drag link, tie rod, and of course you guys have already seen everything over on this side. Oh, we also forgot to mention, we cleaned up and refinished all under here, the factory desert red. So it looks absolutely fantastic. Guys, that was a lot of work, but our parts table is getting smaller. A lot of things are now on the car. So stay tuned for the next video. In the next video, we're gonna move to the back of the car, do the axles, brakes, rotors, sway bar end links, calipers, all the stuff. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Take care.